Evicting a tenant can seem like a complicated process, but in this video, we'll quickly explain the eviction laws in Louisiana and outline some simple steps that landlords can take to initiate an eviction. In this video, we'll talk about what the eviction process looks like, Louisiana laws that determine how evictions are handled, and how to legally remove a non-compliant tenant from a property. Be sure to watch to the end of this video to find a link to a fillable eviction notice. First, what is an eviction? Eviction is the process of legally removing a tenant. If a tenant has failed to pay rent in some way or broken the lease agreement, it's illegal for the landlord to change locks on the property or physically remove the tenant from that property. If the tenant refuses to leave after violating the terms of a lease agreement, a landlord must seek an eviction from the courts. Keep in mind that this is different from the simple termination of a lease. A landlord can opt not to renew a lease after the specified term has ended. There is no need to involve a court in this process. If a tenant in Louisiana breaches the terms of a lease agreement either by not paying rent or violating the contract in some other way, the landlord can send what's known as a notice to quit. There are two options for the landlord to choose from. The first is a 5-day notice to quit for non-payment. This is used when the tenant has failed to pay rent by the date that it's due. The landlord can either give the tenant a chance to pay the unpaid rent back within 5 days or order the tenant to move out in 5 days. In other states, the law may only give one option, but in Louisiana, the choice is the landlord's prerogative. The second option is a 5-day notice to quit for non-compliance. This notice is used when the tenant breaches a term of the lease agreement other than the obligation to pay rent, such as keeping an unauthorized pet. Again, the landlord can choose to give the tenant 5 days to fix the problem or 5 days to vacate the property. There's another form called a 10-day notice to quit that gets used in a month-to-month tenancy. This may be used with tenants who have not breached their lease agreement. After receiving the form, a tenant has 10 days to vacate the premises. If the tenant is served with a notice to quit and does not respond within the specified time frame, the landlord can begin eviction proceedings. To do this, the landlord must file 3 forms with the state court nearest to the property. The first form is called a Petition for Eviction. This form indicates the reason for the eviction. A copy of the notice to quit that has been served on the tenant and a copy of the lease agreement should be attached to this form. The second is called a soldier or sailor's affidavit. This indicates whether the tenant is in the military. It's important for landlords to keep track of this information because it could affect the outcome of the eviction proceeding. The third form is known as the court information sheet, and it lists the names and contact information of the people involved. Once these forms are filed within court, a clerk will issue a form known as an order to show cause, which sets a hearing date. If the tenant fails to show up for the hearing on the date set in the show cause order, or the tenant is present but the judge rules in favor of the landlord, the court will issue a judgment of eviction. Once this has been issued, the landlord may then apply for a warrant of possession. Once signed by the clerk, the warrant of possession authorizes a constable to remove the tenant and the tenant's possessions from the property. The nuances of the eviction process in Louisiana can be hard to follow, but we've got everything you need to get proceedings going, from eviction notices to court documents. You can also access them all at the link below. And don't forget to click subscribe to see more videos about important law-related tips for business and real estate.